All right, lesson 5, relative frequency. Important vocabulary to know is that a frequency count is just simply the number from the table. So in the super strength example yesterday, there were 26 students that chose super strength. The frequency number is 26. Relative frequency is a percent. So you take that 26 students, that frequency number, and you turn it into a percent by dividing it by the total number of students surveyed and then multiplying by 100 to make that decimal a percent. And that's what we're doing today. So if you could have a new vehicle, would you want an SUV or a sports car? Okay, so looking at this data, we want to turn this frequency table into a relative frequency table. Okay, so 21 males chose SUV. So I'm going to take that 21 divided by the total number of students that were surveyed and multiply by 100. And you get 8.75%. Females who chose an SUV would be 135 divided by our total of 240 students, multiplied by 100, and you're going to get 56.25%. And then you're going to figure out how many students chose an SUV in general. Doesn't matter what their gender is. That would be 156. Divide that by our 240, which is the total number of students surveyed, multiply by 100, and you get 65%. Just want to point out another way you could have found that 65% was add together the male percent who chose SUV and the female percent that chose SUV, and you would have gotten 65 if you added those two together. Okay, for sports car, we have 39 males that chose sports car out of 240. We're going to multiply that by 100 and get 16.25% males chose sports car. Then we're going to take the 45 for the females, divide that by our total number of students surveyed, and then multiply by 100 to convert it to a percent. That brings us to 18.75% females chose sports car. And then if I want to know how many people overall picked sports car, that would be an 84 that chose sports car compared to SUV out of the 240 total, and that gives you 35%. All right, now to figure out our other totals, the total number of males, well, there were 60 males total that were surveyed out of 240. And then for females, there was 180 females surveyed out of the 240. Multiply both of these by 100. 25% of the people surveyed were males, and 75% were females. Now notice 25% plus 75% makes 100, which is 100% of the people of the survey, which makes sense. Percents are out of 100. So our relative frequency tables will always have that total percent of 100 in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you add 65% and 35%, you would also get 100. Okay, our hot question is you're thinking if more women prefer sports cars than men. So this is where it gets a little interesting because if you're looking at the percents for sports cars, it looks like female has a higher percentage. But you'll see in the next lesson that we do on Monday that this data is a little bit misinterpreted. So you have to look at it a different way on Monday to see the real answer. Okay. Students in grades 7 and 8 were randomly surveyed to determine if they preferred snowboarding or skateboarding. What percent of the students are 7th graders who prefer snowboarding? Of all the students, so we're going to be looking at this grand total of all the students, so out of 500. And then what is our frequency number? Well, we want 7th graders who preferred snowboarding. So let's see, this would be 7th grade. This would be snowboarding. 130 were both 7th graders and snowboarding. 130 over 500 times 100 gives you 26%. What percent of the students, so of all the students, so 500, preferred skateboarding? Well, here's skateboarding. We don't care what grade they're in, so we're going to use this 230 because that's the number of people that picked skateboarding. It doesn't specify which grade, just skateboarding, so we'll use our skateboarding total. And that brings us to 34%. Again, just use a calculator for that. Here we have 7th grade and 8th grade and whether they picked science museum or math museum. Which percent of the 8th graders, which percent of the students, so again, we're using this total number of students, are 8th graders who preferred science. So we have to find the combination of 8th graders and science, which would be 90 students. 90 divided by 200 times 100 brings us to 45%. Which percent of the students, so of all those 200 students, would prefer the math museum? It doesn't say if they're 7th or 8th grade, they just want to know math museum. So that would be the total number of students who picked the math museum. So 68 students picked the math museum out of 200 students that were surveyed. Multiply by 100 and you'll get 34%. Okay, now we have students who went to the movie during the day versus night and if they got a snack or not. The totals are not in here, so we can add them in. So let's add in our totals. Okay, to figure out this grand total, you can just add up all 4 of those and you would get 100. How many people went during the day? Well, 14 plus 26 is 40. How many people went during the night? 36 plus 24 is 60. That's another way to show that 100 people. How many people got a snack? Well, if we add this together, we would get 50. How many people did not get a snack? 50. And sure enough, 50 plus 50 brings us to that grand total. So either way, you can get that grand total. 50 plus 50 is 100, 40 plus 60 is 100, or all 4 of those equals 100. Which percent of the people, so of all the people, went to the movie during the day? Well, during the day, we had 14 who got a snack, 26 who didn't, which brings us to 40 people who went during the day total, out of our grand total of 100 people. This is going to bring us to 40%. You could put all that in your calculator or just know that 40 out of 100 is 40%. Which percent of the people, so of the total 100 people, went to the movie at night and got a snack? So let's see, at night, and yes, they got a snack. That's our 36. So 36%. All right, now we have hours of sleep. So again, we're going to put in our totals. Okay, the total number of people who got 8 hours or more, well, we're going to add this together, and that will be 106 students said 8 hours or more sleep. For less than 8 hours, we're going to add together our 7th and 8th graders. The total number of people who said they got less than 8 hours of sleep is 155. The total number of 7th graders surveyed, we have to add together both choices for 7th grade, and that's 131. 8th grade is 130. And then our grand total would be 261, whether you add the 7th and 8th graders together, or you add the 2 different sleep options together, or you add all 4 data together. Which percent of the students, so of all 261 students, were grade 8, less than 8 hours? So here's grade 8, and here's less than 8 hours. So that would be 82. That brings us to 31.41762452. Round to the nearest percent. We're going to look at this 4. That tells this 1 to stay the same. So 31%. Again, if this number after the decimal point is 5 or higher, you would go up 1. If it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, the number before stays the same with rounding. Okay, what percent of the students, so of all the students, got 8 hours or more of sleep? They're not asking what grade they were in. They just want to know 8 hours or more. So that would be our total for 8 hours or more. All 106 of these people said 8 hours or more. Times 100, and you're going to get 40.61302,682. This 6 tells our 0 to go up 1, which brings us to 41%. Because if it's 5 or above, you have to round up. Last question, we have High school students playing video games. Boys versus girls, plays video games, don't play video games. We're going to want to add in our totals again because they've left that out. Easiest way to find our grand total in the corner over here would just be to add up all 4 of those. And if you do that, you're going to get 5, 4, 4, 7. How many total play video games? Add those 2 together. 2, 9, 5, 4. How many total don't play video games? 2, 4, 9, 3. Again, just adding them together. How many boys were surveyed? Add those together. 2, 4, 5, 1. How many girls were surveyed? Add those together. 2, 9, 9, 6. Which percent of the students, so of all the students surveyed, were girls? So let's just find girls. Here's girls that played video games. Here's girls that didn't. We want all the girls, so we're going to use that sum from the girls column, convert it, and we get this 55.00275381. The 0 tells the 5 to stay the same, 55%. Which percent of the students, so of all the students, were girls who played video games? Girls do play, don't play. We want girls who do play. Times 100, 24.98623, and so on. The 9 tells the 4 to go up 1 with rounding, right? Anything 5 or above says bump up 1. So 25% of the girls play video games. Okay. Relative frequency. There you go.